Today was a very exciting day because not only did we have the usual Tuesday livestream, but today was also the product livestream of the first quarter of 2022. Which means we got a lot to talk about. Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today is gonna be a more juicy one because we have a lot of different topics to talk about, but it's going to be a lot shorter than you might expect from a product livestream card information dump. And the reason why that's going to be the case is because I've already talked about this in the past with the new trend moving forward. Instead of having these product livestreams once every 6 months, so twice a year, they're gonna change it up and turning it into once every quarter, so every third month. And it's going to be at the end of each quarter, so it's going to be the third month, the 6th, the 9th, and the 12th. And that also means there's going to be less information in each of these product live streams because they only have to do half as much of what they typically did in the past, which also then means probably less hype in general, but still a lot of exciting stuff to talk about and to look forward to. And one of those things being that they now are going to combine the ban list updates with these product live streams, which means every single product live stream is going to have potentially a ban list. Which also brings us to the point, right now, we're not getting any new updates. They confirmed the ban lists aren't going to change for V Premium, Overdress, and Premium itself. Now, the interesting thing is that they immediately changed upon what they talked about in the producer letter, where they would basically have ban lists twice a year on specific dates. And talking about the producer letter, you probably have heard about this in the widespread discussion in the community, but Katamori has currently resigned his position as the general producer of Overdress, or just Vanguard in general, and has moved on. He's basically retired of his position. Now, I personally am very grateful for what he has done in less than a year for Vanguard. He has done amazing jobs for Premium, V Premium, the products he's been released. Overdress is a bit shaky, but it's, of course, he's not the only man doing everything as he's leading the team. It's a team effort, so every success is not only to him but the entire team, and every flaw and every misstep is to the entire team responsibility. But overall, what he's done in a year has been amazing work. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that now that he's gone, we are in danger zone. Of course not, because Vanguard has been here for years, even before he was the producer, and that will be the case when he's gone. But that said, we do know the new producer, and the interesting part is that they are changing things up, and this is honestly a very positive step for the future, because instead of having, just like Katamori, just one general producer for Vanguard, they decided to have two producers. One for Japan and one for the international side, for English. Which is very important because that means we have somebody more focused on the international side of things and also has more time to dedicate what we as players in the West want or need from the game, which is very important because Katamori as a person, if it was one person, he has to focus on everything. Now there's just one person can just focus on that part, and the Japanese sector can focus on the domestic market, which is great. Now you might be wondering, who is this new English producer for Vanguard? Well, that is Sunichi Taira. I will leave a link to his Twitter in the description down below so you can give him a follow, as he will be the new one taking charge of the, I presume, the English side of products and never revealed, but probably there will be more responsibility on him. I don't know how the intricate system works within Bushiroad, but overall we can rely on him doing an excellent job, and I'm looking forward to his work because he has been with the team far before Katamori was even in the picture. So we are in good hands. He is not a rookie in Bushiroad's business practice. He's been here for a while, and I'm very confident that it's going to be great under his guidance. Now that said, the rest of the reveals and information that we got for the product livestream were basically what you guessed, product information, and mainly what the new sets are and potential release dates. First, we've got a new collab set, which is Record of Ragnarok. I have not seen this anime, so I have no clue. I've heard people saying it's somewhat like JoJo or something. I can see that from the artwork. I also get some Bucky vibes to some extent, but I don't know, to be honest. But the interesting part about this particular collab, and I know a lot of people aren't excited about collabs, you can see the image, it says English edition release. This collab is going to have a simultaneous universal release date. So on April the 22nd, it will release in Japan, it will release in the West. So, from my understanding, this has never happened before, that a single set drops on the same date worldwide. I hope that this is potentially a trend we're going to see, because not only do we now see that we're going to get collabs, we're going to get them when they matter. That's a plus, because that potentially makes more excitement about the reveals themselves, because usually nobody cares about these collabs, as we probably are going to get them, or when we're going to get them, they are basically redundant at that point. But besides that, it makes me hopeful that this might also then flow into the actual sets themselves, and we will then suddenly, or hopefully, get worldwide releases for all the sets. But that's just wishful thinking at this point. Now, if we stay on the collab set train, we also got a new date for the second set of Shaman King, which was already confirmed, and that's going to be on the 22nd of April. Now, this wasn't revealed during the product livestream, but I haven't really had the time to talk about it, so I might as well splash it in here. But we do have a release date for the upcoming Lyrical Monasterio set for the English version, as it's going to be on, and I kid you not, on April 1st. So on April 1st, we're going to get the second Lyrical Monasterio booster. So that rounds up these sets that we have yet to get a date for. Now, moving on from that, this is something we already saw before, and these are the artworks for the new storyline in the lore of the Cray, I believe. Cross Epic is, I believe, what this is called. And most of the artworks we already saw, but they added more artworks to it. And as you can see in these artworks, this is going to be a bit interesting, because I do believe that these might actually become cards. Honestly, I don't know if they confirmed anything of it, but the fact that we see this egg look thing that looks very much like a stutter, and we have more unit artworks, it would be weird if they just made the artwork for lore purposes and never make them out of cards. I don't really see that being a thing. I think this is going to be probably a new ride line, a new archetype, maybe even a complete new nation somewhere down the line. But what they actually are, and what they potentially could do, and what they mean for the game, I have no clue. Maybe they said it, but I don't understand Japanese that well to make any sense of it. But we probably will see more information and learn more about this probably moving forward in the future. But we got some more artworks, and yes, one is basically boobs with a body. I don't know what they were thinking, but sure, go ahead with that one. And then another thing that we saw is the new high rarity reveals of the SSR for set 4. And as already expected, they're going to be the new grade 4 boss unit evolution versions. And this artwork also confirms that they're all going to be grade 4s, which we basically already confirmed when we saw Magnolia, as well, and especially when we also saw Nirvana, which we're going to talk about later in this video. Overall, the artwork looks pretty neat. They got the signature and hot stamp of the artist, I believe the voice actress of the unit from the anime, and it basically feels very like the SVRs from the V series, but I think these look a bit more cleaner, as we have the golden border. But more importantly, instead of just having a color background, the background does have more shades to it, and more importantly, it shows the nation flag behind the unit. Now, in Nirvana's case, there isn't really a lot to see, but with Bruce, you actually see it very nicely, as well as with Bastion. So it does give a nice little extra touch to these cards, which make them more stand out than the typical SVRs from the V series, which I personally wasn't all too fan of, because they are just bland backgrounds with just a color, and usually the background of the units was actually pretty nice and pretty beautiful. But in this case, I think this is a fair good trade-off with all the extra flair and bling thrown on the card itself. And then the final news bit that we got, and this isn't really anything that is out of the ordinary, is basically the confirmation of set 5. We could guess that there would be a set 5, but we now know the Japanese release date of set 5, which is going to be on April the 1st. So when we are going to get Lyrical Monasterio set 2, they're going to get set 5. And that basically concludes the product reveal segment. So let's take a look at the new cards that we saw today, and we got 2 new cards for Stoicheia, more specifically for Zorga, And we got the new Nirvana. So let's first take a look at Nirvana, my own home turf, as I am very excited about this new Grade 4 and it has a lot of potential, but it does have some kinks to need to work out to make this card really work. You will understand that once I will highlight all the aspect about this card. So here we have the brand new Grade 4 overdress, as we've got Chakravarti, True Dragon, Mahar, Nirvana. And Mahar Nirvana has two abilities from which both look very similar to the original Nirvana, just like we saw with Magnolia. So this whole trend is probably going to be the same for every other of the Grade 4 evolution cards. So first off, we have the skill Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if you have a unit in the overdress state, all of your front row units get power plus 10k. So instead of paying a counterblast and it is on attack of the Vanguard Circle, it's now just a continuous power buff and you only need one unit in the overdress state. This is basically a replacement of the Persona Right, as it functions very similar to the Persona Right clause. The only difference is that you need to have an overdress state unit on the board. The great thing about this is that Nirvana now can give power to non-overdress units, as previously with the Grade 3 it only gives to himself and units with the overdress ability. Now you can slap a Trickster on the front row and it will potentially get the 10k power. You could also now build an overdress deck with more non-overdress cards, as they can actually be beaters now that gain the additional power. You might think about the Urger combo with the Grade 3, as now the Grade 3 also gets extra power, which is nice, but keep in mind, this card doesn't have the same name as the Grade 3 Nirvana, which means we're going to lose Urger. Losing Urger is a big hit. So this card needs to make up for that, or we need to get more support in this set to make up for the loss of Urger. This also will show the potential problems with this card, but it could be fixed once we see the abilities of the new Nirvana. So I don't want to speculate on that part all too much, as we don't know the complete set just yet. But this skill in itself also has the added bonus, because we only need to have one overdress on the board, we no longer have to force resources into an double overdress board, which basically is susceptible for any type of removal. Now we only have to build one overdress unit and still gain the pressure and the power on the board that we would get with the Grade 3 Nirvana. The only thing that we miss if we write into this thing instead of Nirvana is that we cannot double stack 10k power of the ability and the Persona Right itself. That's just not possible anymore if we go into this Grade 4. But we do get the triple drive, which does have some value, and with the Dragon Empire over trigger, which resends your Vanguard, having the triple drive is pretty nice. So that's also a nice interaction that works pretty well with just how the deck works and what cards the nation has access to. But of course, Nirvana has not only this ability, it also has another ability, which is act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost counter +1, and put a card with Nirvana in its card name from your hand or the soul into your drop. Choose a Grade 0 card from your drop, call to the Vanguard Circle, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and if your opponent's damage zone has 4 or less cards, deal 1 damage. So this is basically the revival skill reworked a little bit. Now, the interesting thing about Nirvana with both skills is that his first ability now doesn't cost a counterblast, which means you save up counterblast for your other cards like Exculpate or Scalpel, or however the new Grade 3 is called, and of course Valiente, potentially your Arcs, and any other card that uses a counterblast. You can now save up more resources for those cards, but now you need to use counterblast for the revival ability. Of course, you don't have to use the revival ability every single turn, as if you have Tricksters in your hand, you don't really need it, especially since you don't need to build double overdress boards anymore. You don't have to always have all the Tricksters to the board, so that also opens up that a bit of breathing room for you, for your resource as well. But the interesting thing about this ability is that it can potentially be a counterblast and a soul blast for a resurrection and a ping on your opponent's side of the field. That ping, depending on your scenario and how far you're in the game state, can be very important, because Nirvana is currently a free attack deck with this iteration. So every attack needs to matter. The lower the damage count of your opponent's side of the field is, the less your attacks will matter, especially with the big numbers you're generating. You want to make sure those big numbers are lethal, so you want to have your opponent at 5 damage or 4 damage if you can come with crits, as soon as possible. And this ability allows you to put your opponent in that scenario even if they potentially heal earlier in the game and put themselves out of that situation. You can keep putting them into that situation and to some extent negate heals, which is actually a very strong effect. But the downside to this ability is, in regarding to the Great Free Nirvana, is that it definitely costs way more resources, as you either need to counterblast a Soul Blast to just get a Grid 0 on the board, or you need to counterblast and discard, whereas the original skill is just discard. And on top of that, you need to specifically discard a specific card, which is a card with Nirvana in the name. Now, the first time you use this, no problem, because you can just Soul Blast the Great Free that you just rode upon, as that is just a card with Nirvana name. But the second time you want to use this skill, different story, because now you need to draw into another copy of this card, or draw into a copy of the Great Free. But probably what's gonna happen is that if you're gonna play this card, you're gonna run the Great Free in your right deck, and you're gonna run maybe 3 to 4 copies of this card in your main deck, as we know that Overdress is pretty tight on deck space, but potentially you can open up a bit more deck space with this card, as you might not necessarily have to force a lot of Overdress cards in your build. So overall, this card is very interesting. It opens up a lot of potential deck building, and it also will allow the Overdress deck to diverge into multiple builds. Because as soon as we lose Urger, there can definitely be a statement made that the Urger variant is probably still as good as this new variant, because it probably will have less multi-tech, but maybe more power and more consistency in some department. But maybe you're more a fan of the multi-tech, so you can still go with the Urger build, and now you have this new Mahar Nirvana variant as well, which is great because it opens up more diversity within the deck designing, deck space building, as well as just in tournament play, as you have now multiple variants of Overdress which you can encounter, which is overall pretty great. And keep in mind, this card can change completely once we see the new Verena. That new Verena can change everything. It depends if that card can multi-tag, it depends if that card works very nicely with this new Nirvana, or if that card is specifically a grade 4, which some players have been speculating. If it's a grade 4, that could change a lot for this card, because that means you need to play this card in order to play that Verena, as seen as you cannot get a grade 4 on the board without having a grade 4 Vanguard. Now moving on, we also got the 2 new cards for Zorga, and we start off with a brand new normal order, which is a grade 2 normal order called Gather Upon Me, Ye Wandering Souls. And Ye Wandering Souls has the effect, play this with cost, discard an order card from your hand, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets drive +1 until the end of turn. So in normal circumstance, it's a -2 to get a drive check, which overall in card economy is a -1. You basically just go -1 by playing this card, which is not great, but because it's actually gaining a drive check, which can force more shield from your opponent's hand, and that drive check can also be more triggers, a higher chance to hitting your over trigger, and all that kinds of shenanigans, might make up for the -1 the card generates. But that's seeing it as being played from hand. But that's not always the case, because we're talking about Zorga, which means it can also be played from the drop zone, and then it's active, and then it's basically just a wash, because you don't lose a card from hand for the effect. And then it might be playable, but there is a small problem with this card in my opinion, which depends on what type of player you are and how you experience playing Zorga. Could matter or could absolutely not matter in this discussion. And that's the fact that you specifically need to discard an order card. A lot of Zorga players, from my understanding, have the issue of just having order cards in their hand, period. Like, they can load the drop zone, no problem with order cards, but getting those order cards in hand is sometimes the issue to start your alchematic plays. So having a card that now is also specifically need to discard an order card on top of it to be played might be a problem, but at the same time could also not be a problem if you are a player that runs a buttload of order cards and always have too many order cards in hand, and order cards in hand are basically dead cards, so discarding that card for a potential drive check, which could be a trigger, which is way more shield value, might be in it for you. You could, in that scenario, if you are that person, this card could be amazing and could be great, but it all depends on how you build your deck, how you experience playing the deck, and if it really fits in your playstyle. Now keep in mind, Zorga is a free attack deck, so the extra drive check increases the chance of potentially hitting crits, which then allow you to put more pressure behind those free attacks, which is the same deal what I just talked about with the Nirvana deck, where you want to make those free attacks matter at all times. So more drive checks could definitely walking can definitely move in that direction as well if you have a higher chance of hitting crits. But talking about those crits, you don't necessarily have to drive check them in the first place, because Zorga has a new card in their arsenal which basically just has crits for days. As we got a brand new triple R grade 3 in the likes of Roaming Prison Dragon. And Roaming Prison Dragon is the brand new main support card, as it is a 5k base. Now of course that's a joke because it's Toikea, it's not Chaos Sanctuary, but interesting enough, it's a 5k base. But it makes sense if we're gonna talk about the skill itself, because its skill is auto from drop zone. When you play a normal order, you may call this card to the record circle. If you call this card, perform one of the following. If it was Alchemagic, perform all of the following instead. One of those things being, this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn, and the other being, this unit gets critical plus 1 until the end of turn. So effectively, during an Alchemagic turn, it's a 15k attacker that swings with double critical. Now, just on the base value, it's effectively as strong as most of the grade 2s that Zorga has access to, which all are 15k beaters. So it's not anything stronger than Zorga already has access to. The issue is that it's a grade 3, which means you cannot intercept with it, unlike the grade 2s, so you don't get the shield value that the other grade 2s provide when you resurrect them. But this card does get the crit, which means if you have two of these bad boys on the field, your attacks are gonna matter. They cannot comfortably take the Vanguard attack, especially if you just swing with triple drive, as you can just rip a crit. So either they have to hard guard the Vanguard with a perfect guard or the overtrigger to just not take a chance, or they have to take a chance and you can just crit sack them, which is basically very similar to what was the playstyle for Overdress in set 1 with the whole Valiente playstyle. And then on top of that, you have these grade 3s with crits on the side, which basically going to get a buttload of power because Zorga can buff their rear guards to oblivion pretty easily with all their powerful order cards. So this card does interact very nicely with the Zorga engine, but you do lose the defensive sacrifice. But there's another aspect about this card which is very important, which Zorga never had access to as of yet. That is self-reviving units that doesn't cost any resources. Currently, Zorga needs to dedicate a lot of their order cards in building boards. They have their Spirit of Body Condensation, they have their Wigging Soul of Agony, and they have the other cards, Regurgitation of the Underworld, and that kind of stuff to build a board. Which means you're dedicating half your order cards or half your value in just creating a board and then powering up with certain skills. With this card in your arsenal, you can basically just go pure value, pure power with your Alchemagic cards, and then use these cards to build your board for you, and then pressure them with these cards on your opponent's face, which allows you to potentially power these cards even further beyond what you could previously. Because another problem that Zorga has, besides just the Alchemagic inconsistency, is that if you have built a board and your opponent doesn't wipe your board, the only way to get value is by forcefully intercepting with your units and then rebuilding the board, but you're using more resources to do so. Whereas in some instance, you much rather want to just use your resource to pump your board or gain resource or gain utility that actually can help you to push for game, instead of just doing the same riddle every single turn that sometimes works, sometimes not. And this grade 3, together with the already built-in revival skill of Zorga himself, allows you to build a board outside of the Alchemagic orders and use your Alchemagic for different types of engines. Because you have this new engine that started to build up where you can recycle from your bind zone with your cards. That can now be more fully utilized thanks to this card taking a bit of the resurrection cost or the resurrection strain of your deck, and also use a lot of your order cards to just generate power, or just maybe potentially retire your opponent's field, or any of that shenanigans. Even the new added triple drive potentially can be a viable option because you don't have to dedicate all those revival orders. Of course, you're still gonna play a couple because you will not always have access to this grade 3. You need to have a backup plan, but you do have options now outside of those to potentially go into different directions with Zorga. Now, will this card be the new main thing for Zorga? I'm not so sure, because there is a glaring problem with this card, and that's I already explained that. It sacrifices shield, because you cannot intercept with your grade 2s. And Zorga already has the issue that it has lower shield value because it plays all those order cards. So that could be a bit tricky, But you have options and you can do other plays, potentially maybe run more blitz orders or go a different direction. But this could be a potential 2-off, maybe a 3-off, maybe a 1-off if you want to go that direction. Because you can combine this maybe with the shark play, that you have this guard restrict unit and you give the shark the critical with the order, I believe, Nectar of Sensationalism. And then have this card to the side that already has a natural extra critical on top of it, which also could be a viable play. You have different options, you don't have to go fully for this card. But this card does bring a nice utility to the deck, where it can just build boards for free on its own, which means you can save up your resource or open up deck space for different plays than just purely building boards. And with that said, that rounds up all the reveals that we got today. Overall, not a lot of news in terms of what we're used to with the product live streams, but that's to be expected as we're gonna get multiple of these a year than what was in the past, as well as also now being incorporated with the ban list, which could mean that those potential product live streams could be more entertaining or more eventful if the ban lists themselves are very exciting. But currently there were no changes, so there wasn't really anything to talk about. That's also the reason why I did everything in one video, because usually in the past I typically did do one video early in the morning, right after the reveals of the product live stream, and then later in the day for the weekly reveals. But I didn't really thought I could make a video out just saying, oh, this is a new product, this is a new product, this is a new product, and this is a new product. It felt a bit empty, so that's why I just smushed them together in one video. And that said, I'm very curious what you guys think of these new reveals, as well as the new sets that are coming up early next year. Let me know in the comments down below which set you're the most excited about, which reveals you're the most excited about. And also, again, if you are still waiting for your grade 4 of your particular ride line, let me know in the comments down below what you're expecting their skill. And who knows, maybe you're not even waiting for the remainder of the big 5. Maybe you're playing a different ride line like Eugene, Hexorb Sorcerers, maybe even Flagberg or Greedon. Throw in the comments down below what you want to see, what you expect of a potential grade 4 evolution of those cards, because we might see them for them, we might not. It's just pure speculation, but it's always fun to speculate about these particular things. So let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely Patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!